Good evening, class and Professor Ferguson. This is my journal summary, or my video journal summary of my final paper for our class in human sexuality. My paper's on the effects of rape, and when I first thought about that, it seemed like an odd paper because I don't think you'd have to stretch too much of your imagination to imagine what, or to figure out what rape must be like and how it would affect someone. But it's interesting. The research talks about rape as an event, sexual assault as an event, date rape kind of has its own category as well, and then there's also this category of child sexual abuse, and that's incest and probably pedophilia, but in many cases more of incest, and it's kind of got its own little special category, which I thought interesting because rape isn't defined by age, but more by the act of forced sex. There's also a category, as my mind is just going back, there's also a category on marital or spousal rape, and that is tied in with domestic violence as well. So it's not just this big category of rape. Sadly, society and culture has made us have to put in subcategories for this overlying effect called rape. Now, one of the things, or several of the things that are consistent, no matter what category that you're in, is that some of the obvious effects of rape are depression, suicidal ideation or thoughts, anxiety, night terrors, not nightmares, but night terrors, similar to what we would call post-traumatic stress syndrome, that reliving of an event with a trigger. And for some, that trigger is something as simple as a smell, a location, a sound, an unexpected noise that for any of us might startle us and cause us to jump, but for that person who's experienced a rape, it takes them back to another place and time that they really wish they didn't have to return to. So those things are common. Those are common threads among all of them. As coping mechanisms, one of the biggest ones is substance abuse. Sadly, many victims of rape will turn to alcohol, drugs, to sort of figure out a way to cope or to bring some sort of peace in that mental madness that's going on inside. So those are consistent across the board. However, what I found really interesting was those who were victims of childhood sexual abuse. The writers had two things to say. That there's not really a whole lot of research into what is the best treatment options, despite the fact that they are similar in some of the way they express the effects of the rape, i.e. the depression and the anxiety and that sort of thing. Those who have been victims of childhood sexual assault or child sexual abuse tend to have, of course, the substance abuse issues, but also move into the eating disorders. They see a lot of that, cutting, and the other one was risky sexual behavior. And those are things, although you may see on occasion in these other categories, that seem to be pretty specific to those who have experienced childhood sexual abuse. So I thought that was very interesting. And the writers sort of put that off as that these the sexual assaults, the rape, all of those things were usually a one-time event. Even if they were raped multiple times in the event, it was a one-time event. Where with the child sexual abuse, statistically speaking, it's not just a one-time event. It happens or can go on for years. And so it really does have a way of skewing boundaries and other things, how a child even looks at themselves sexually as a woman or as a young man, and how those things are leading them into that path again of that more the eating disorders or the cutting or those sorts of things. So I thought that was really pretty interesting how there's, despite the fact that there are a lot of things that connect them, there are some things that really do separate these two events. There's also, the second thing that I found really fascinating is incest is not as quickly incest is not as quickly prosecuted as other forms of sexual misconduct on children outside of the home. There is this sense that a person's home is their castle. And kind of what happens in those four walls does not really belong, or is not really a big issue for the courts. And so that's a very interesting attitude that they're still working greatly on to sort of get that to change. And there has been some good changes made, but nonetheless, it's still very much a part of our culture. And how sexual assault is viewed across cultural boundaries is just a whole nother amazing thing that I don't have time to get into. So I hope that helps, gives you a little insight into what the paper's about, some of the things that I learned and I found fascinating. And yeah, not a pleasant subject, but apparently rape occurs far more frequently in the United States than it does anywhere else in the world. Pretty interesting. Thanks. Take care.